The deep dive is back, and today we are wading into some really contested territory. I mean, maybe the most contested territory of the modern age.
That's not an exaggeration.
No, it's the space where, information meets intention. And we're not just talking about simple political disagreements.
Not at all.
We are going deep into this murky subject that makes even the most informed people out there wonder if objective reality is even, I don't know, worth checking on anymore. We're talking about the myth of neutrality.
Right. And welcome to, episode 3 of The Great Trust Crash. We've kind of moved beyond the quaint, almost luxurious question of what is true.
Yeah, that's a luxury we can't afford.
We can't. Today, we're asking a much more fundamentally cynical question, which is, who appointed the referees? Why did they pick that awful outfit? And why does it always feel like the score is stacked against us?
Exactly. The whole pursuit of objective truth now feels less like this noble quest for knowledge and more like trying to, negotiate an interest rate with a central bank that, secretly decided like years ago who the winners and losers were going to be.
It's already been decided.
It's all baked in. They operate under this banner of impartiality, but you look at their actions and they fundamentally favor one outcome over another.
And that analogy is it's spot on, because when trust is the only currency left that actually matters, the biggest threat isn't the blatant lie anymore. I mean, that's almost easy to deal with.
Right.
It's the creeping, insidious feeling that the entity claiming to be impartial, whether it's a fact checker, a social media platform, or some algorithm you can't even comprehend, is secretly wearing one team's jersey.
Or maybe worse, they don't care about either team. They just want maximum chaos because that's where the engagement is. That's where the profit margins are.
Maximum chaos is maximum profit.
So our mission today is a deep dive into the structural vulnerabilities of these information guardians themselves. We've pulled together some source material that lets us really scrutinize the political impartiality or the lack of it in human-run fact-checking organizations.
We're looking at places like Spain and Chile.
Exactly. We want to know if they're even following their own rules.
And then we pivot. We go from the human arbiters to the biggest, most opaque one of all, the algorithmic systems.
The black box.
The black box. Specifically, we're looking at YouTube and how its systems can kind of shepherd users down these increasingly problematic rabbit holes, even when, and this is the scary part, even when you start from a totally benign place.
Yeah. So we are analyzing the myth of neutrality in this whole modern information ecosystem. And what we found suggests that the very systems built to protect us from lies might be suffering from a kind of terminal selection bias.
It's a pretty bleak picture.
Let's unpack it.
Okay, where do we start?
Let's start where the sources begin, which is with a pretty dramatic declaration. It kind of gives this whole conversation a geopolitical weight. Researchers, national security experts, they're calling the cognitive space. So what we think, what we feel, what we share, a new battlefield.
That's a huge shift.
It's a massive strategic shift, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're used to thinking about conflict over land or oil or resources.
Yeah.
But now the fight is about controlling perception itself.
It's the final frontier of warfare, really. The most recent Spanish national security strategy. It explicitly warns that this cognitive space is the new field of conflict.
Wow.
And that campaigns of disinformation are its main weapon. And you have to get this, and this isn't some minor debate over local policy. This is high-stakes geopolitics aimed directly at fracturing our ability to govern ourselves, to alter national perception.
If you control the narrative, you control the outcome.
Right.
It's just a strategic recognition that if you can manipulate enough people to distrust their own institutions, to distrust their neighbors, to distrust reality itself,
then the cost of a real military operation goes way, way down.
or it becomes totally unnecessary. You've already won.
And look, disinformation, it isn't new. This isn't some brand new invention. We've had vintage paranoia for decades.
Oh, yeah.
We saw it after 9/11, right? All the conspiracy theories suggesting the Bush administration was somehow involved. The difference today is the scale. It's the industrial scale, the velocity, and the sheer efficiency of the delivery system.
So the inflection point, according to the evidence we've seen, seems to be around 2014. Why that year? What's so significant about 2014?
It really seems to be the moment these operations became strategically optimized. They became globally coordinated. You see this dramatic increase right after the Russian annexation of Crimea.
Right.
Then you get the major Western political shocks. So the 2016 U.S. elections, the Brexit vote, and then the chaos engine that was COVID-19, which just proved that disinformation could be globally deployed and weaponized against something as fundamental as public health. These events, all of them together, they just demonstrated the devastating power of mass, coordinated intentional manipulation delivered through social media at a scale we had never seen before.
So we need to be really clear about what this modern weapon is. The sources are so careful to define disinformation. It's not just an honest mistake, it's a specific recipe.
It is. It needs three fundamental, non-negotiable elements. You can't leave one out.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, there has to be intention. A strategic, deliberate goal to produce a specific effect. Usually that's destabilization or reputational damage or just a general erosion of trust.
So it's malicious from the start.
Malicious from the start. Second, it requires an appearance of truth. It has to be packaged in a way that makes it look like real, legitimate content. This is why you see all these pseudo-media outlets, these professional-looking social media pages.
They mimic the real thing. And the third element?
Fundamentally, it has to contain a lie, a falsity. It must be verifiably untrue. And that intention piece, that's what separates disinformation, which is basically weaponized malice, from simple misinformation.
Which could just be an innocent error,
Yeah.
right? Someone sharing an old article without checking the date.
Exactly, an accident versus an attack.
And when you flood the zone with this weaponized content, and you couple that with how our media is now structured through these personalized feeds, the result is what the researchers call truth a la carte.
That phrase it perfectly captures the outcome of having way too much information. Because we have infinite choices and because we're all driven by, psychological comfort, we engage in selective consumption of truth.
Yeah.
We just don't share a common set of facts anymore. We all construct our own reality, and it's largely driven by platform algorithms that are just prioritizing content based on what we've liked before.
This is where that economic cynicism really kicks in for me.
Yeah.
It's like how the central bank saves Wall Street, because they're too big to fail. But they let Main Street savers and small businesses go under. The algorithms aren't serving us the whole nutritional spectrum of reality.
No.
They're offering us the intellectual equivalent of highly processed, sugary, high engagement content because engagement equals ad revenue. It's just profit over people again.
It is the fast food analogy operating at a societal level. You log onto a platform, and the algorithm is like this very sophisticated, slightly manipulative waiter. You think you're choosing what you want.
You're looking at the menu thinking, I'm in control.
But the platform only stocks the ingredients that guarantee an immediate dopamine-fueled, yes, I knew that, kind of confirmation. It just reinforces the biases we already have, like confirmation bias.
Right, seeking out stuff that already aligns with what you believe.
An anchoring bias, where you just latch onto the very first piece of information you see and never let go.
So we just end up in these curated filter bubbles, completely reinforced in the idea that our version of the truth is the only rational one. And, why wouldn't we think that? The algorithm keeps showing me hundreds of other people who agree with my most extreme political take.
It's self-validating, it's deeply comforting, and it's highly, highly polarizing.
The attention economy has just become this grand resource allocation problem. And the resource is our limited time and our cognitive capacity.
And these systems are not built to educate you. They are built to make sure you spend that time being angry or terrified or deeply validated, all of which are emotional states that keep us endlessly scrolling, clicking, and just digging the trench around our own reality a little bit deeper.
It's optimized for conflict. Conflict drives clicks. It's that simple.
It's that simple.
So if the platforms are serving us this biased, low-quality fast food, the natural immune response should be the rise of the health inspector, right? The fact checkers.
Exactly. And fact-checking journalism really did explode in response to this crisis of trust. It went from this kind of niche academic exercise to a global, professionalized industry.
And it happened fast.
It happened so fast. Political fact-checking has been around for decades, but the establishment of the International Fact-Checking Network, the IFCN, in 2015, that was a game changer.
Okay, so they set the standards.
They set the global code of principles: impartiality, transparency, accountability. And this standardized approach led to a boom, especially in markets that were already struggling with political instability. You saw them pop up all over Latin America and Spain, mostly between 2017 and 2019.
The theory is beautiful. Specialized, rigorous entities dedicated to objectively verifying high-stakes political discourse. But theory and practice, they often diverge.
That they do.
And we have a really compelling case study from Chile looking at their constitutional plebiscites in 2022 and 2023 that helps us test that core principle of impartiality and rigor.
The Chilean study is great because it gives us crucial hard data on how disinformation actually operates during a major political referendum. They looked at 237 verified cases from two IFCN-accredited platforms,
Okay, who were they?
Mala Espinacheck and factcheck.cl.
And what were the main characteristics of the disinformation they were tracking?
Okay, so first, the delivery mechanism was overwhelmingly social media. I mean, 85.2% of the cases, traditional media was there, but it was a distant second.
Right.
Second, and this is so critical to understanding how hard this is to fight, the source was typically categorized as diffuse, meaning not identified, origin unknown, in 84% of the cases.
84% diffuse. That tells you you're fighting an invisible enemy. It's not one person you can point to. It's a coordinated structural campaign designed to look like organic chatter.
How do you hold an anonymous bot farm accountable?
You can't.
You can't. And the content itself was mostly visual. Images, photos, they're cheap to produce, they're highly emotive, you absorb them quickly, and they're usually classified as either misleading or imposter content.
Okay, so let's get into the methodological differences between these two organizations, because this is where that idea of pure neutrality starts to show its first cracks, even among the professionals. The study found that these two accredited Chilean platforms use very different methods to verify things.
Yeah, this is a nuanced but really crucial finding. It helps you understand the trade-offs between, say, rigor and speed. Both platforms are supposedly following the same IFCN standard, but their preferred methods were, well, they were significantly different.
How so?
So, Mala Espinacheck, they prevailed in consulting expert sources. So, calling up economists, scientists, and using official documents.
So Malaspina is doing the deep slow burn. They're pulling government records, getting quotes, making sure every official number is right. That's high authority, but it's slow.
It's very slow. They prioritize depth and official authentication, which just takes time. Meanwhile, fastcheck.cl, they relied heavily on reverse image search and consulting the original source.
So FastCheck is focused on rapid response. They're debunking visual fakes, making sure an image from 10 years ago isn't being passed off as something from today. That's a speed priority.
It's a total speed priority, and it tells us that even inside an accredited framework, one platform prioritizes the authoritative but really resource-intensive method, while the other prioritizes the high-volume, rapid response method you need to deal with viral visual fakes.
So there's already an internal variance in just their editorial priorities.
Exactly. The concept of rigorous selection still requires these complementary and sometimes competing methodologies.
Okay, that variance it's a small crack. But the second, and I think far more profound crack in this whole myth of neutrality comes from the Spanish case study. This one involved Neutral, a major fact-checker there. And this analysis just goes straight for the core issue of partisan bias.
Yeah, this one is direct. The investigation looked at Neutral's verification practices over a 4-year period, from 2018 to 2022, and it focused specifically on statements made by political figures. The researchers used some pretty complex stats to look for bias across the 3 phases of verification.
Which are what?
Selection, so what they choose to check, execution, how they check it, and resolution, the final verdict.
And the results on their technical competency they were actually pretty good, weren't they?
Surprisingly favorable, yeah. In terms of process neutrality, the study found no significant differences between political parties in the execution phase, so the actual steps they took, or the resolution phase, the final verdict of true, false, misleading.
So in plain English, once they decided to check a statement, they did the job neutrally. They didn't just rate conservative statements as false more often.
Correct. The technical job was done impartially.
Okay, but, and this is the big but, we're back to the input problem. What about that first phase, the selection? Who gets chosen to be checked in the first place?
And here is the terminal flaw. A significant selection bias was detected. The study found that Neutral paid, and I'm quoting, greater attention to statements made by politicians from the Conservative Partido Popular, or PP.
So they were disproportionately choosing conservative targets.
They were. In effect, they were aiming their firepower predominantly at one side of the political aisle.
Wow.
And this bias was really acute when it came to the former PP president, Pablo Casado. He received nearly half of all the denials in the sample that was focused just on political leaders. So the question becomes, why? If the execution is neutral, why is the selection so biased?
And this is where we have to connect the dots back to those structural threats we talked about, right? The funding ties. These fact-checkers, they rely on commercial agreements, often with platforms like Facebook or Google, just to keep the lights on.
Exactly. And what are the platforms motivated by? Volume and engagement. So if a conservative politician makes a highly controversial viral statement, which, let's be honest, often happens because controversy drives engagement, that statement gets the most complaints, the highest reach, and it gets flagged most often by the platform's own monitoring systems.
So the fact checker, whether they're politically biased themselves or not, is structurally incentivized by their funding source to check the content that is currently generating the most noise and the most viral activity.
It becomes a resource-driven bias, even if it looks like a political bias on the surface. They're prioritizing the biggest, most viral threats to the platform's integrity, which just so happen to often come from high-profile conservative figures who are good at leveraging those engagement tactics.
But the practical effect is the same. The Conservative Party feels like they're being unfairly targeted, and it doesn't matter what the fact-checker's true political allegiance is. The trust is gone.
The outcome is a perceived bias, which is all that matters.
Okay, so this brings me to my full VAR rant.
Oh, here we go.
No, but seriously, this entire dynamic perfectly mirrors the frustration with the video assistant referee in soccer. It's the perfect analogy. Because with VAR, they have all the tech, right? They've got the slow motion footage, the precise geometric line.
The offside lines, yeah.
The technology to make the perfectly accurate call on whether a player was offside by like 3 millimeters.
Yeah.
The technical rigor is there.
Wow.
But if they only decide to check the critical goals scored by your team, or if they look at one ambiguous handball, but they ignore the blatant game-changing foul that happened 5 seconds earlier, the fans don't trust the outcome. They lose their mind.
It's the selection of what to review that causes all the arguments.
Exactly. They have the IFCN standards, the reverse image search, the official documents. The technical rigor is there. But the most controversial, confidence-destroying decisions are all based on that discretionary, opaque initial selection of which play to review. If you have a perfect methodology, but you're only applying it consistently to the opponents, you still look like an instrument of the opposition. It undermines the entire mission of neutrality.
And that leads us right to the unavoidable philosophical problem here. Is neutrality even achievable if the mere act of selection is partisan? Whether that's driven by a political motive or just by resource scarcity and platform pressure.
It's the modern digital version of who watches the watchers.
Applied directly to journalism and media institutions whose entire legitimacy rests on being perceived as fair. If you've got funding ties to major platforms, and then you exercise this discretionary selection, those fissures in your legitimacy, they start to appear immediately. And that leads directly to the great trust crash we're all living through.
So if the human arbiters, the fact-checkers, are struggling with the selection bias because of funding and resource pressures, now we have to pivot to the far less accountable arbiters.
The algorithm.
We're moving from journalists choosing which politician to check to code choosing which reality to serve you. So let's focus on the YouTube recommender system, the invisible hand guiding billions of hours of viewing every single day.
Yeah, we have to stop thinking of YouTube as some kind of passive archive. It's not a library. It is an active curator. The recommender system, that little sidebar, the autoplay feature that says watch next, is responsible for a staggering 30% of all YouTube video views.
A third. A third of what you see is not your choice.
It's not an unguided choice. It's a curated decision made by the platform's primary engine.
And we know the goal of that engine is brutally simple. It's to maximize watch time, maximize engagement, and maximize ad revenue. It is not designed to maximize sanity or civic engagement or truth.
No. It's designed to maximize conflict because conflict is addictive.
It is.
And a systematic review of 23 different studies looks specifically at whether this recommender system facilitates pathways to problematic content. Extremist or radicalizing material. This is robust cross-sectional data we're talking about.
So what did that broad sweep of research find? What's the verdict?
The overall verdict is it's pretty damning. 14 of the studies implicated the recommender system in facilitating these problematic pathways. 7 showed mixed results, and only 2 found no implication at all.
So the system is demonstrably steering users toward content that often violates its own community guidelines. Hate speech, extremism, misinformation.
Violent conspiracy theories, you name it.
This is the infamous YouTube rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
And the research shows that the algorithm can lead people from genuinely, innocuous starting points to these deeply problematic even violent places.
And that's the most alarming part. Researchers found that starting points like videos about, say, fitness or tiny houses or martial arts or new age gurus,
Yep, totally normal stuff.
totally normal stuff, could lead users straight into deep conspiratorial content. This is not about users searching for why is the government lying. It's about users searching for how to fix my back and somehow ending up with videos about Pizzagate.
And the research got even more specific and frankly chilling when it came to incel ideology. You know, the involuntarily celibate community that's associated with extreme misogyny and real-world violence.
It did. A random walk analysis put a number on it. They determined an 18.8% probability that a user could encounter at least one incel-related video from a benign starting point within just 5 steps of recommendation.
Almost a 1 in 5 chance.
A 1 in 5 chance that 5 simple clicks, guided entirely by the algorithm, can land you in a world of violent, misogynistic extremism that you had no pre-existing conscious interest in ever seeking out.
5 clicks. It's not some deep, dedicated search. It's the equivalent of mindlessly swiping on a dating app and somehow ending up in a chat room full of just existential dread and hate speech.
Yeah.
This is where the benign meets the lethal.
And we have the ultimate real-world dark anecdote to underscore this danger. It's the case of Buckley Wolf. He's a 26-year-old man in Seattle who tragically killed his own brother with a sword.
Oh my God.
Because he believed his brother was a shape-shifting alien reptile. A journalist went back and meticulously analyzed Wolf's liking behavior on YouTube.
Okay, slow down. Let's trace this. This is the literal deadly path of algorithmic radicalization. How did he start and how did he end up there?
He started, innocuously enough, with videos mostly about martial arts and fitness. Then his activity shifted. It shifted toward what researchers call alt-like content.
Okay, what's that?
It's videos focused on things like anti-political correctness, free speech maximalism, cultural critiques that position the viewer as the victim of a liberal society. From there, the system it efficiently guided him toward more hardcore conspiracy theories.
Like Pizzagate and QAnon.
Exactly, which are heavily promoted by the platform because they are high engagement narratives that encourage continuous viewing. They keep you hooked.
So the alt-right videos, they didn't necessarily have outright hate speech in them, but they acted as a kind of structural bridge to the really extremist content. They set the stage for deeper distrust.
That's it, exactly. The alt-like content establishes the framework, which is, I am being lied to, and traditional sources cannot be trusted. And once that foundation of distrust is built, the algorithm pushes the user into the full alt-right and, violent, paranoid conspiracy content.
And in Wolf's case, it culminated in the delusion that his brother was an interdimensional reptile.
Yeah. That sequence, from fitness to far-right conspiracy and ultimately to a violent murderous delusion, it just demonstrates the lethal potential when benign curiosity gets captured and weaponized by algorithmic suggestion, all for the sake of maximizing watch time.
This brings back that whole filter bubble debate, doesn't it? One view is that the algorithms trap us in these homogeneous bubbles, and that leads to radicalization. But if people are already searching for conflict, does that let the algorithm off the hook?
Well, that's the supply and demand view. The counterargument is that users are just seeking content that's consistent with their pre-existing attitudes. One study found that 90% of the views for extremist content came from people who already scored highly in racial resentment.
So the argument is that the algorithms don't create the hate. They just find the shortest, most efficient path between a user's bias and the corresponding extremist video.
Yeah, they're just an efficient marketplace for bad ideas.
But isn't the whole point of a globally accessible platform that it's supposed to widen our perspective, not just efficiently feed our existing biases? I mean, the efficient optimization for conflict still indicts the platform design, doesn't it? They're not neutral delivery mechanisms. They are active amplifiers.
They are amplifiers, absolutely. The system is designed to give you exactly what you want, even if what you want is terrible for you and for society. If you search for an argument, the platform will deliver the most extreme, most engaging version of that argument it can find, no matter where that path eventually leads.
Which leads us to maybe the most cynical finding of all, the one about attempted interventions. Sometimes trying to fight the fire just adds fuel to the algorithm's engagement model.
The counterproductive fact-check effect. Researchers found that counter-message content, so, anti-extremist material provided by public institutions designed to pull people out of the rabbit hole, could counterproductively place users closer to extremist content through the recommendations sidebar.
Wait, so I watch a video designed to teach me media literacy and prevent extremism. And the algorithm interprets that as, oh, you're interested in the topic of extremism, and then suggests an actual extremist video next.
Yes. In some cases, users could encounter radicalizing content within 2 clicks of watching the counter-message video. The algorithm seems to interpret the user's engagement with the topic, even if it's in an oppositional or educational way, as a signal to serve up related high-engagement content.
It's blind to ideology.
It's totally blind to ideological valence. It only sees engagement potential. And the result is a total structural failure of intervention because the architecture of the platform benefits from the conflict itself.
That is the intellectual nihilism we promised at the top. We try to fight the fire with education, and the algorithm thanks us by handing the user a gas can 2 clicks away. It's fundamentally impossible to win when the platform's architecture benefits from the existence of the fire.
You can't.
So let's move back from the algorithms to the intentional political sphere. We can see that modern disinformation isn't always, deepfakes or complex foreign conspiracies. Sometimes it's just aggressive, high-stakes political parody. And it's designed to achieve a very specific tactical goal in domestic politics.
Yeah, this is the realm of reputation assassination using humor and caricature and strategic humiliation. And we have a really compelling recent example from Chile, this political ad war involving the conservative UDI party and the Minister of Education, Nicolas Cataldo.
This wasn't an attack on a fact, it was an attack on his character.
Exactly, on his character and his loyalty.
So detail the ad. What was in this parody video that caused such an uproar?
So the UDI produced this viral video, and it showed a caricature of Minister Cataldo as just lazy and incompetent in his job. The whole theme was that he was so preoccupied with working for the opposing presidential candidate, a woman named Janet Jara, that he had effectively abandoned his duties.
So while the nation's critical educational issues like dropout rates and literacy are being ignored, he's off campaigning.
That was the narrative. But the key here is the timing and the political context. That's what makes this more than just a standard political jab. It was so strategically potent at that time.
Why? What was going on?
Because the video was released amid active, credible rumors that Cataldo was being considered as a key hire for Jara's campaign team. So the UDI's goal wasn't just to make him look bad. That's just standard politics.
Right.
It was to generate a structural constraint. A specific, tactical, political double bind.
The classic political head fake. Okay, let's break down that double bind because it's a perfect illustration of how this weaponized content actually achieves a political outcome.
Okay, so if Cataldo resigns from his ministerial post to go join Jara's team, he instantly validates the UDI's caricature that he was distracted and already abandoning his duties.
So that's a political win for UDI.
Big win. But if he stays in the government, he is now effectively blocked from joining the campaign command, which was the UDI's actual core objective. They wanted to neutralize a key, competent adversary from bolstering the opposition's campaign.
So the UDI used a lie, packaged as humor, to force the minister into this no-win scenario. And they ensured that whether he stayed or went, he damaged the opposition's presidential prospects.
It was a successful tactical play. According to the sources, the political objective blocking the transfer of a key asset to the opposition was achieved. It was information warfare focused purely on talent acquisition and retention. It's like corporate raiding, but for politics.
But success like that often comes at a moral cost. What was the fallout?
The fallout was significant, both externally and internally. Minister Cataldo himself called the video the closest thing to bullying. But crucially, the blowback wasn't just from the government side.
Right, we saw internal condemnation from the UDI itself.
We did. A fellow UDI senator, Gustavo Sanguesa, who happens to be the president of the Senate Education Commission and works directly with Cataldo, publicly condemned the video. He demanded an apology from his own party leadership.
Wow.
Sanguesa called it an unacceptable lack of respect that trivializes politics. And he explicitly said his party should not be using ridiculous caricatures, regardless of who the target is.
That's a fascinating conflict. It shows that even when a tactic works, it can fracture the internal cohesion of the party that deployed it because it crossed an ethical line that some of their own members weren't willing to follow.
It creates an ethical debt. And the ultimate coherence critique came from Minister Camila Vallejo, who just highlighted the blatant double standard and the cynical nature of the whole operation.
How does she frame the hypocrisy?
She pointed out that the UDI had spent the entire previous week vigorously condemning a dirty campaign against their own candidate, Evelyn Matei, which involved false rumors about disease and personal defamation, and then they immediately turned around and promoted a similar defaming caricature against a state minister.
The synthesis here is pretty clear. Intentional, politically charged disinformation, even when it's delivered as parody, doesn't just attack facts. It attacks trust and reputation to achieve these specific electoral or internal political aims.
It's not about being funny. It's about control. And it's about the degradation of the entire political environment.
And it reinforces this nihilistic view that the ends justify any means, and that principles are just a weapon you deploy when you're the victim.
Exactly.
So we've established that the information arbiters, both the humans and the algorithms, suffer from these structural weaknesses that just fatally undermine the very neutrality they promise. Before we look at solutions, let's just briefly summarize the two major threats we've identified.
Okay, so we have two major threats that work together. First, you have the fact-checker opacity and selection problem. The organizations, they might adhere to rigorous standards like the IFCN's, but their legitimacy is just compromised by funding ties often to the very platforms they're supposed to be policing,
Right.
and the discretionary nature of their selection criteria. That leads directly to the selection bias we saw in Spain. The choice of what to check introduces these inevitable fissures.
It's the money supply forcing a focus on the most viral stuff, which leads to the appearance of bias. And the second flaw is the systemic problem of the machine.
Algorithmic opacity. The researchers who are trying to audit platforms like YouTube, they can't fully replicate or analyze the recommendation system because YouTube won't fully disclose its algorithms.
It's a proprietary black box.
It is. And that means researchers can only give us probabilistic data like that 18.8% chance of hitting insult content, rather than a complete understanding of the underlying mechanisms that are driving these harmful pathways. You just can't fix what you can't fully audit or observe.
The black box is locked, the engineers aren't giving out the key, and the system just keeps generating chaos because chaos is profitable.
Yeah.
So how are global bodies even attempting to respond to this? We have to look at high-level regulatory responses, and it seems like the European Union is leading the charge here.
The EU approach really recognizes that these aren't just technical problems, they're structural market failures. So their focus is on external policy lines, robust regulations like the Digital Services Package. And this involves funding these massive collaborative projects aimed at strengthening democracy and fighting information manipulation across national borders.
Can you give us a few examples of these projects? And let's focus on their strategic goals, not just the names, because that's what really matters.
Sure. Let's think of three distinct goals. First, you have projects focused on empowering media professionals themselves, so something like AI Code. Its goal is to give media professionals new AI-based tools to detect new forms of content manipulation.
So deep fakes, advanced synthetic media.
The stuff that's constantly evolving, it's arming the journalists.
Okay, so you're fighting complex AI manipulation with defensive AI tools for the professionals. What about for the citizens?
That's the second goal, and it's focused on citizen resilience. So they fund projects like AI for Debunk, which focuses on developing human-centric AI interfaces, things like web plugins, collaborative platforms, tools to help individual citizens navigate digital media safely and make informed choices.
So building up the intellectual defenses for the average person.
Exactly.
And the third goal, you mentioned one that focused on information suppression, which is a really key distinction from standard disinformation.
Yes, that project is resonant. And its unique goal is to focus specifically on information suppression. So disinformation is the presence of a lie. Information suppression is the deliberate absence of necessary context or opposing viewpoints.
You're creating a skewed reality by controlling what's not said.
Exactly. So Resonant developed strategies to reduce the vulnerability of target groups to that kind of subtle manipulation. It's a vital dimension we often ignore when we only focus on explicit lies.
These are necessary, high-level, expensive solutions. You need them when you're dealing with entities that have the budgets of small countries. But ultimately, when you talk about the information ecosystem, the human element is still the single largest attack vector, and it's the hardest to safeguard.
Which brings us to the first and the last line of defense: epistemic vigilance and citizen education. And this is where all the structural solutions run right up against cognitive reality.
And we've seen that our formal education systems are they're falling so short of this challenge.
Drastically behind. Formal education, especially primary and secondary, it often still lacks the essential training on how to consume, evaluate, and verify information in these digital environments. We're still teaching kids how to read and write for a linear print-based world,
Right.
but we're neglecting to teach them how to filter and verify in a non-linear algorithmic world that is actively optimized to manipulate their emotions.
You're trying to teach a fish how to filter pollution, while it's actively swimming in the toxic personalized stream that Google designed. The algorithm rewards emotional, viral, immediate content. Education demands slow, critical, reflective processes that are just.
Yeah.
They're totally antithetical to the attention economy.
And so ultimately, the burden falls back on you, the citizen. You're the first and last line of defense against disinformation, and that requires an active, constant effort to detect, to verify, and crucially, to not amplify false narrative.
We're all responsible for the decisions we make in that digital fast food line, even if we know the menu is rigged for profit and chaos.
We are.
So what we've explored today really shows that the whole concept of neutrality, it's not some starting point we can rely on. It's an incredibly expensive, constantly negotiated, and tenuous process.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about human arbiters whose selection criteria are biased by commercial pressure, or algorithmic systems that are optimized for raw engagement over objective truth, the structural incentives consistently lean toward conflict and chaos.
We have to exercise vigilance not just about the source of the lie, but about the motives of the messengers, both the human ones and the machine ones. We've seen that the systems built to protect us, the fact-checkers, are structurally flawed by their own selection process, and the algorithms are built to efficiently funnel curiosity into extremism.
And if political polarization and societal fragmentation are the proven profitable goals of modern disinformation campaigns, and if the very algorithms that govern our reality benefit exponentially from our intense, sustained engagement in that conflict, well, that raises the ultimate provocative question for you, the listener.
If the referees are secretly wearing one team's jersey, and the entire playing field is designed to reward the most aggressive players who cheat, how do you decide when choosing strategic ignorance, just tuning out, disengaging from the stream, and prioritizing your own cognitive defense is the most rational form of self-preservation?
Think about that carefully. Keep diving deep.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.